going to conferences all the time is the main driver for progress in your skill set and also your relationship, and basically any professional can become a better professional by attending conferences.
It's not the standard, okay? It's a movie theater, but the visual is great and the sound is great, and I've seen a lot of room and space, and I think it's organized well.
Seeing all the people here today and they're excited about stuff, you can see the energy and the desire to learn and do new things.
And I was positively surprised about the depth, the technical depth of the sessions, and how that makes the tester part of the team.
I think developers do benefit from coming to QA conferences, just the same as testers can benefit from going to dev conferences. You've got to have a broad understanding of what's going on.
It's really inclusive. I would say it's super diverse. People are really, really open and friendly, and it's really organized.
Conferences are well worthwhile just for the ideas that they spark in people. When people come back to the office, they're full of ideas and they're all energized up.
Hi, I'm Ioana, I'm from Romania, and I'm working as Head of Quality Engineering at Wolf Wizards UK, trying to make automated financial advice affordable to everyone. In our session, we will discuss about how we can create a shared understanding with our business experts, how we can use automation as an enabler in our favor, and how we can bring everyone into this journey of continuous deliveries, being comfortable and confident in our changes. See you at TestCon Europe 2020.
Hello everyone, thank you all for being here. I know it's just before the lunch break, so please bear with me for the next 40-45 minutes, and hopefully we can discuss about how we can go faster into a regulated environment. As per the name, I will walk you through a journey into some steps, some examples that helped our teams get into a faster delivery pipeline and shift testing as left as possible, while still having the confidence that we provide suitable financial advice to our users. I'm going to tell you a couple of steps that we as a delivery team have done and what we have trialed, what worked for us basically to deliver at speed whilst not jeopardizing the quality of our systems and our confidence in them, and more importantly, the user experience. But to start, who am I? You might wonder, as you've never heard of me before. I'm a Romanian currently experiencing the tech community in UK. I have a background as an automation in test engineer, working in different type of languages and tools for the last 10 years. I'm currently working as head of quality engineering at a fintech in Midlands, England, trying to make financial advice affordable and accessible to everyone. In the last couple of years, I've come to understand that automation in testing is actually a piece of a bigger puzzle. So now I'm very interested in the bigger picture, the entire delivery workflow, and how actually we can improve it. How can we enable faster deliveries without actually dropping the quality, and what even means quality when we talk about it. And as you can see from the right picture, from the side picture, I'm a massive introvert and observant. But I really wanted to add this so I can highlight that if I can do it, you can do it for sure too. You have a voice already, and I hope this image will give you a bit more courage to go out there into your team or a local testing community and share your stories. There's always something new to learn, and everyone can do it. So if we dive straight into it, we're going to have storytelling basically of a journey today. So we're going to start with the reality where usually the teams are finding themselves. We're going to continue with the destination, basically where they want to get to. And then we're also going to talk a bit about the journey and how do we get there, and as I mentioned, a couple of examples of what worked for us, and hopefully you can have one takeaway basically that you can trial into your team as well. Cool. So let's dive into the reality, or even more realities, because each team usually have their own version of it. This is an example from one of our teams at one point. What I'm trying to highlight here is that from an engineering perspective, and usually this is what happens with most of the teams, is we worked in different type of ecosystems, and for example, we work in a microservices architecture, and we have all the tooling and the infrastructure to go as fast as we would want to. For example, we have small containers with more or less bounded contexts. We do create unit tests, component tests that give us basically the confidence that they are doing what they're supposed to do. So from this perspective, from a tooling, from a technical perspective, we can release whenever we'd want to. We do have the capability. We are comfortable to do so. But then, from a business perspective, though, I worked in a couple of fintech companies, and what it usually means is that somewhere on a website, maybe under regulations, you're going to find a tiny paragraph saying something like this: "We are fully regulated by FCA and take responsibility for our advice." So what it means is that with any release, any deploy, any change in the system, we need to ensure we still provide suitable advice to our customers. And I assume the same happens in a banking system or any other regulated environment. So yeah, I'd say no pressure. And to continue on this path, we usually have all the experts needed to ensure we deliver quality value to our customers. We do have cross-functional teams. We do have financial experts if you are working indeed in a regulated environment as well. They to offer us guidance over what's best basically to our customers. We do have close relationships maybe to our clients to get feedback from them and actually to understand what they want. And then the second part, the engineering development or delivery processes. Each team, whenever, I don't know, when a new build, when a new team is built, basically, they want to start fresh. They want to use the latest technologies, the latest ways of working, and usually everyone starts by book. So you do Scrum, 2 sprints, or maybe Kanban. You could do cross-functional teams. You definitely would do demos basically to get that feedback. You do all the testing within the sprint. You take, for example, for us, we take retrospective very, very seriously because we always learn and we adapt, we trial, and we keep whatever works for us. And everyone has the best intentions. At the end of the day, everyone wants to deliver quality to their customers. And as engineering team, we also want to make sure we deliver quality by having quality within our processes. So we do have the best intentions. And diving into the third picture, basically, usually, again, when we start a new team or if we are into an existing team, we usually have we usually have a automation strategy in place already. That's an example basically of a test strategy that we used to have, which in theory, it was really good. So we were trying to have different levels, layers of tests that would give us the confidence that what we said we do initially, basically after the development, it's actually what we've done. So basically, those tests are gonna be the evidence of this is what we decided to do, and this is what we've done, and this is the evidence basically to do that. Again, we do have the automation strategy in place. We do have the best intentions. We do have the teams. We do have the experts. That seems nice. I mean, it seems like a success story. It seems like if you do all of that, you'll definitely be able to release faster, to release quality, to trust everything that you do, and actually the business trust everything you do as well. And yet, even with doing all these stuff, for example, in our situation, we were doing all everything that I explained earlier, and yet our delivery cycle was looking something like this picture at one point, more or less similar with other teams as well. You might be delivering maybe once a month, because this is what we were doing at one point. Even if we wanted to deliver faster, we were still in a position where we were delivering once a month to our customers. Test and release evidence is a big factor of this process, especially being in a regulated environment. So even at the beginning of each team, basically, these processes usually are really, really manual, with piles of documents basically generated from the system, printed and manually checked. By the time, for example, we got into this 4 weeks delivery lead time, there was definitely some automation in place for the algorithms behind the scene. But still, our first reaction was basically to be a lot more cautious, even if we were doing everything that we wanted to do, even if we were communicating, we had cross-functional teams, we had all the tooling in place to release faster. As a business, our first reaction basically was to be a lot more cautious before delivering anything. We were a lot more comfortable when having that 1 week focusing on testing solely and then doing a one-off release. So this was usually our reality, and I'd be curious how many of you are finding yourself in a similar situation. Unfortunately, it's online, so I cannot see the feedback from the audience. But let's dive into the next phase. So the next phase is the destination. So let's have a look at the vision. How do we want to operate? And again, as an example, even if we are working in financial services and regulated environments, for us as an engineering team, it was really, really important to get basically the vision to be able to get into a continuous delivery pipeline. And what it means is basically to have the ability to get changes of all types, so new feature, configuration changes, bug fixes, anything, into the hands of the user safely and quickly in a sustainable way. And I really, really like this. This is from Jess Humble's book, Continuous Delivery, where he explained into a lot more detailed continuous delivery and what it implies. And why I like it is because you mentioned you need to get it fast, but you also need to think about the safety and sustainability as well. And from our perspective, from my perspective, I'm thinking that if we want to achieve continuous delivery, we always need to think about different quality aspects, and we need to embed basically a quality process. So it's not about the testing phase anymore. It's actually looking at the whole process and trying to embed a quality into it so that we get into a continuous quality, and then we get into a continuous delivery pipeline as well. So what it means is, by having this vision, by having this goal, we know that to get there, we need to think how we can embed quality at different points in our processes, as I mentioned. So communication streams, delivery, release, notifications, even post-release, for example, monitoring and alerting, observability as well. Everything needs to be thought about. So coming back, basically, naturally, engineering teams really want to deliver at speed because they have the tooling, they have the infrastructure, they have the frameworks to do this. But the business is not as comfortable with this idea yet. So what actually can we do to mix these two together to ensure we are all comfortable and confident with the pace we work at? So what we came to realization after actually talking to our people, so our business experts, our non-technical people, our financial advisors, for example, part of the same teams, is that they were not comfortable with the pace of fast delivering, not because they didn't trust we can release fast, but because they didn't know if it's safe. They didn't understand what was happening there. So then, of course, if you don't know, of course, you're not going to be comfortable with any type of process. All they knew is that, okay, we're going to make multiple releases a day. So we needed basically to ensure we deliver safely at speed, and we need to make sure basically if we want to get into a faster delivery pipeline, we need to make sure we get everyone on board, because everyone is on the same journey with us. It's not about engineering, it's not about testing, it's about the entire organization. They need to be comfortable with the processes. Whew. So what safe actually means? It means to be protected from or not exposed to danger or to risk. And also what it means basically, it means we need the risks of providing bad outcomes to be at minimum. Definitely something crucial in regulated environments, and actually beyond that, but even more with the regulations that are in place in this type of environments. We need to make sure everyone is comfortable with the changes happening in the system. And also we need everyone to understand the impact of the changes in the system. And it kind of makes sense. Basically, we need to make sure we lower the risk of providing bad outcomes, and everyone in the team, as I mentioned, need to be brought into the same journey. So they need to be comfortable and they need to understand the impact of those changes. We do understand as a technical team, and actually it was mentioned during the keynote today as well. One activity is, for example, the testers or quality engineers to become more technical, to understand what's happening behind basically under the hood of the system. Actually, now we need to see how we can bring the business into the same journey, because they also need to be comfortable with the changes, and they also need to make sure they understand the impact of the change within the whole system. And this is how, after some word playing, SAFE model was initially thought about. And of course, we played with it into our advantage, but it's speaking about creating a shared understanding so that everyone has the same understanding of the system and comfortable with any type of changes. We need to look at how we can use automation as an enabler to help us. So if you want to go fast, definitely need to have some automation in place to help you with that. We're going to see how we can focus on outcomes, basically to take that step back and step into your customer's shoes to understand what their expectations are and what are your expectations as a business experts from their journey. And also, of course, being a regulated environment and not even expanding even more from that, we're also going to look at the evidence that we need to leave behind, because definitely we need to have an audit trail that we were comfortable releasing at one point. Cool, perfect. So now let's dive into it in a bit more detail. And this is basically the last part of our discussion, which is the journey, where we're going to dive into each one of them. So we're going to start with shared understanding. And usually what happens is all projects are built by teams. And the challenge of ensuring that everyone on the team understands the vision and understands the goals of the project is what shared understanding is all about. I like to refer to it as the why, the what, and the how of a project, of a feature, of a product, whatever you want to call it. A team is made basically of several people that share a common goal. If they don't buy into this common goal, whatever it might be, it leads to failure in achievement of the goal, because everyone is going to understand a different thing. So failure to buy, this is why basically having a shared understanding across the team is very important. And when I say team, as I mentioned, I don't mean the engineering team only. I mean actually the business team as well. I mean everyone from concerned with your business goals that we're having. So it's really, really important to create a shared understanding, because if we do have a shared understanding, we know we are on the same page, and then we build the trust into delivering faster. So let's see how we can bring the business closer to the tech, because achieving shared understanding across the team may sound simple and straightforward, but in practice, it is a lot harder to achieve. And why is that? Is because there are systems, there are technical things, there are complexities, there are microservices, containers. It's quite difficult for example, a non-technical people to get all that. And as it was mentioned in the keynote, as testers, if we want to evolve, or if we want to help the delivery teams even more, we need to make sure we are technical enough. We need to make sure we get more technical so that we can understand the system and how it's working. If we want to revert a change, as it was the example, we need to make sure we understand the impact of that revert. What's going to happen with the services? Are they going to behave correctly? Are they going to behave as we want them to? So it's very important to have this shared system understanding. And this comes for the non-technical people too. I know it can be difficult, and definitely we wouldn't want them necessarily to understand, I don't know, all the details of an API or a container or how it's working. But what we want to develop of an understanding of the system, basically, so that we can build something that actually delivers business value. So what it means is that everything should be triggered, everything should be linked to a business value, and then everything dived into. So we should identify the areas of business functionalities, the bounded context, as we see in this example. So we have the accounts department, and then we can have maybe an account service. We do have the orders department, so then we can have an order service. And what it means is basically by using a shared language, you would be closer to create that shared understanding as well. So use the same language and take actually a customer-centered approach to the entire service delivery life cycle. So then we can understand the system as a whole, and then we can see how it applies to different type of layers that we have. So as I mentioned, microservices, different bounded contexts, or maybe the payment module, which maybe it's configured by, I don't know, 3 or 4 services, so on and so forth. So once we start understanding the system as a whole, and we do apply basically this customer-centered approach, we can actually take a dive into a bit more detail and actually create a shared service understanding. Again, we can work together with business experts to understand the boundaries of a service, to understand the boundaries of a function, and the associated interfaces. So once these boundaries have been defined, we can now work with our business experts, our domain experts, to identify service functionality and the associated interfaces. So actually, what I like to call it is treat each service individually as a product. If it's your product, what do you expect from it? What your user expects from it? And then talk to your business experts to identify what type of functionalities should we have into this product. And then basically mention using techniques like the same language, the same methods, even if they're financial terms, just having that jargon, it's going to help understanding basically better the system and what it does under the hood. And now we're going to dive into a couple of examples. So we can work together to understand the boundaries of a service, as we mentioned. And we can use this as an example into our scenarios, into our testing techniques as well. So these are a couple of examples from our income tax service. Income tax service is basically an API which does loads of calculations, UK based, different tax bands, different taxpayers, different situations. And what we've done is actually we started using a common language, because this is something that from a regulation point of view, it's really, really important. So that means that our business experts needed to understand how we gain confidence into new tax years, basically how if a new tax year appears and the boundaries are changing, how are we comfortable that the changes are working as expected? So what we started doing, we use a common language. So everyone is familiar with Cucumber and Gherkin language. We used it with our business experts to identify scenarios. So we didn't use it to just create a different, another extra layer of abstraction. We actually use it as examples during our conversations, during our story defining, basically, so that we can understand what exactly requires changes. So we use examples when we create stories or when we discuss stories, because it's a lot easier to articulate on a scenario rather than talking so many numbers. So we can see here, basically, we discuss about the tax bands, different scenarios. We're also going to have an example. So we have Brian I don't know if we can see this. Oh, here we do have Brian with an income at basic rate. So we can see basically how much tax he's going to pay into this tax year, 2021, and then also national insurance contributions as well. What we have is another scenario basically with the state pension amount for this tax year, and then for a Scottish resident as well. So these are examples that we translated them into automated scenarios so that we can start creating that shared understanding. Because we used examples in our story definitions, it was a lot easier to start discussions on really complex algorithms. This is another example, a bit more complex, of national insurance. If you are from UK, you're going to be familiar with it. But what it happens in this situation is basically it's something that it's deducted from your gross salary after taxes. And this was a way basically to create some examples for us that we can discuss directly on rather than, again, theoretically. So it was a lot easier to say, okay, what should happen in this scenario if I have this income as an applicant and my partner has this income? What should be my gross income? What should be my national insurance basically paid? What should be my taxes? Well, and the same situation for my partner. Because it's a really complex discussion, again, I highlight that it was a lot easier to discuss on an example. And as you can see, with tables and everything and how Cucumber is designed, it's a lot easier basically to highlight these examples. So this way, the non-technical people started to understand a bit and trust a bit more our system. And also in a new tax year, we don't hear about, oh, we need to test every tiny bit of calculation within the system. Actually, they understand that the change needs to be into a shared service because all the tax calculations are made into this service. And this is the evidence basically that it's doing what it's supposed to do. So all we hear now is, okay, we need to look at the income tax service tests and we need to see how they are impacted. So we shifted the discussion because they started understanding and gaining more confidence into our system. Cool, which leads nicely into the second part, automation as an enabler. And this is a really nice paragraph from Janet Gregory's and Nessa Crispin's book, More Agile Testing. It could have been basically taken from someone else when written the book, but I really like it because it highlights that we need to push the tests as low as they can go for the highest return in investment and quickest feedback. So any type of automated scenario that we have, we need to make sure we get the highest return from it, and also we get the quickest feedback from it as well. And of course, everyone has their own version of the test pyramid to discuss about how we tackle the automation. And as we've seen in the first part of the discussion, we were already doing this. So we already had a version of the test pyramid where we were trying to describe how we wanted to achieve automation within our microservices architecture. I know there are loads of discussions about the test pyramid, but what I think I want to highlight with it is that it starts a conversation. So just by trying to identify whatever works for you. So it can be a triangle, it can be a pyramid, it can be an hexagon, whatever works for you. Just open the discussion across the entire engineering group. And then you can see how it's actually going to start discussions a lot more. So when we came up with this test strategy, automation strategy for us, it's really easy because now we have it in one page. Actually, this image is a bit out of date because it doesn't have the latest tool that we use. But during the conversations, we wanted to highlight into a single picture how we do automation. And actually we wanted to highlight, so it's a mixture between the test triangle and the testing quadrants. So the lower we go basically with the small tests, the unit tests, the component tests, the more are closer to technology facing, so here, and they're going to be closer to an isolated environment. So we have mock dependencies, mock service dependencies, and actually from a regulation perspective, we decided we don't need any test evidence for them. But the higher we were going, the closer we were going to business-facing scenarios, we identified that actually we are going closer to a production-like environment. So we wanted to make a difference between what's the this environment, basically an isolated one where we run unit tests, compared with an end-to-end test, for example, which is a mocked system boundary. And then on the right side, we are highlighting that the higher we go, basically, so once we have business facing scenarios, we need to make sure we do have test evidence required, because we do highlight different parts of algorithms, and it's going to be basically your evidence that you are comfortable with the release. What happens usually in these situations is that we usually have a separated team, an automation team, and they're the only ones maybe that have knowledge about the test strategy, about the automated checks, where they live, how they live. And actually what we should do if we want to deliver safely, if we want to deliver faster, we need to actually expose those to the entire delivery team. So your engineers need to know about them. They need to trust them. They need to understand what they're doing and in what type of environments they're working, so that, again, they can build trust, they can build confidence that actually the automated checks are verifying your system that you're testing, and they need to trust it to say, if the tests are green, I'm comfortable to release because they didn't catch anything. Of course, with all the drawdowns, basically, so we need to focus on exploratory as well. We need to make sure we do have a balance. But if the tests say I passed, we need to be 100% sure that they indeed passed. And what usually happens with automated tests is that trust is so easily broken, so easily with automated checks. We need to learn from past mistakes, and we need to make sure we improve our capabilities and our capabilities for automated tests as well. We need, as I mentioned, we need to trust them. We need to trust them when they say they fail, that they fail because there is potential issue in the system. And if they pass because actually they do the right checks, the minimum level of checks, for example, that we need. And we know, we are comfortable that they do verify some parts of the system, and we trust into their outcomes. In order to gain the trust into our automated tests, we need to make sure basically they provide fast feedback. We need to make sure we do have some level of parallelization into our frameworks. We need to make sure we do have a reliable script, so we don't need to run them every time, multiple times, so they are reliable. If they say they passed indeed. We need to make sure they're easy to maintain, because we don't want to have too much effort basically updating loads of, I don't know how many number of tests. We need to make sure we add smart checks in place, not too many, not too few. We need to make sure we do have checks in place, and again, if they pass, we trust they pass. If they fail, we understand why they fail quite fast as well. We need to make sure we have visibility, traceability, test reporting in place. What's automated testing if we don't have test reporting in place? Notification testing, notifications of our tests, how they're doing, if they're stable, if they're unstable, if they started failing, why they started failing. They are independent as well, so if one of them fails, we don't want everything to fail, so that we can identify easily the root cause of the issue. And of course, most importantly, or not necessarily most importantly, but very importantly as well, a test data creation strategy in place as well. So we need all these, we need to consider all these so we can build trust into our automated tests. What happens if we don't have all this is that, again, what we've seen in so many teams, and we struggled in our teams for so long, was that tests were taking too long to run. They were flaky. We had to add loads of retry mechanisms in place so that we can trust what's happening with them. We maybe had too many surgeons, or all of them were failing at every code change. We didn't have any reporting in place, any notifications. They were difficult to investigate, and actually no one knows when a test fails. So we got into a situation where automated testers were only checking. Those were the automated tests were their responsibility. And basically no one knew what's happening with automation. So then if you don't know, the automated scripts should help you gain the trust that your change didn't break the system, so you are safer to release. If you have no idea what's happening with them, how are you confident to release? And again, this would have been a good opportunity to see how many of you found yourselves in similar situations, because unfortunately it's a very popular situation that we found ourselves into as engineering teams. What I wanted to highlight here is that you shouldn't be afraid to move away from one big test automation project that we keep seeing again in different type of teams into actually multiple smaller focused test packs. So what we have here, we do have 208 test projects, not necessarily, sorry, test targets. And each of them basically is running a suite of tests. So that's not a number of test scenarios, because each one of them might have another 1,000 suite of scenarios in it, and different type of configurations, different type of environments. But by moving away from one big test automation project, it actually helped us deliver faster and getting that faster feedback. Identifying for each microservice or for each smaller subsystem, we identified what type of scenarios we need to run. We took them away, we isolated them, and then we were able to put in place scenarios like basically triggering some scenarios automatically after deployment of a service. So don't be afraid to experiment. But then, of course, the visibility is really important, because you need to make sure, having so many task projects, you need to make sure you get the value from them and you get the notification in place and you understand what's happening in them, because you need to understand, what do I test with these ones? And again, these are a couple of, I'm going to show you a couple of examples. So this is, we discussed about the scenarios that we use to create that shared understanding. So examples when we discussed about stories or changes in the system, examples to help creating that shared understanding. Of course, those are the first candidates to be automated. So then here we have a couple of examples, scenarios automated in Cucumber.js, because we wanted to make sure we share this test evidence, we share the reporting with our business experts, so that they can understand these are the scenarios that we used as evidence. And as you can see from the link at the bottom, we also decided to actually publish them into S3, for example, so that we can share it with everyone. And we put in place mechanisms like one microservice. Basically, these type of tests are going to run, they're going to publish into S3, and the link is going to have the name of the service, income tax service, and then the version of the service that we tested as well, and then the scenarios, easy to understand for our non-technical people. And what happened is, by presenting these scenarios and these reports to the team, to our business experts, they started again to gain confidence, because they started seeing them, so that they started discussions about the scenarios. Okay, what's the impact on this scenario if we're making this change here? Another example, so is, if you listen to your team, you're going to understand what they need. So at one point, being in financial services, we generate reports, documents. And what happens is, we wanted to be in a place, whenever we make a change into the system, we wanted to see only some expected changes happen into these documents. So we came up with a plan where actually between two releases, we do compare. So basically we take all the reports for all the scenarios that we ran, we compare them one by one. So the previous release, which is the baseline, and the new candidate, we compare the content and we highlight the differences. So this improved a lot the confidence into changes, because we knew, okay, even if I made a change here or into this report, this is the only thing that changed, not anything else. And we highlight basically what we added, what we removed in different type of paragraphs or tables, anything. And again, it helped gain the confidence that, okay, I understand the impact of this change and I'm comfortable releasing. Another example here we have basically, again, on the test reporting, understanding from the team. So engineers wanted to see a report is attached basically to what type of services and what type of services we exercised, what type of releases we compared. So we put loads of information in our metadata about the version of the services, what type of services actually we tested in that report, and environments, test runs, so on and so forth. Another point, we wanted to understand the flakiness and the stability of our tests. So what we started doing is we pushed automatically all our test results into Logstash. So we started creating dashboards so we can analyze trends into our automated scripts. So we can identify flaky tests, maybe if they started taking too long to run. We identified performance issues by looking into these type of metrics. And automation doesn't mean only automated checks. Find what type of pain points there are in your team to go faster, especially basically in auditing processes. So this release bot is actually some Jira automation that was put in place to help with some manual steps that we used to have, basically. So we understood when we release something. We do have notification in place when the test was failing, if a test was passing after a failure as well. That helped, again, gain the trust and put more visibility. Diving really fast into the last 2 points, focusing on outcomes, is quite similar with what we've spoken before, but in this part, basically, by this time, we know we've built the system right, because we do have boundary testing, we do branch decisions, basically, to understand what type of scenarios we need to confirm that we build the system right. But actually, at one point, we need to actually take a step back and try to understand if we build the right system. So from early days, automation is a massive enabler. So we do have loads of API tests written in JSON, as I mentioned, or JavaScript, and they didn't quite make sense. And also, for example, due to the boundaries, some were very unrealistic scenarios, but they were valuable from a testing perspective, but they didn't quite make sense from a user perspective. So we came up with persona testing, and actually we didn't came up. It's been there living for a very long time. And personas are fictional characters which you can create based on your research. So usually you do have personas, marketing personas, sales personas. Again, work with your business experts to identify them and to see how you can bring them closer to the ecosystem, closer to the product. So here we have 2 examples of 2 personas that we implemented, we automated for one of our products, Investment Wizard. And then we come back to all the other steps. We automated them. So we have Charlotte here. She is a persona for our income tax service, which is basically a more complex scenario. So she has incomes, saving incomes at basic rates. She has dividends incomes across 2 other rates. And we wanted to see what's the impact on Charlotte whenever we made tax changes. And it's really easy putting names and faces to them, because you start discussing about person. What's the impact on Charlotte if we change the tax band to ABC? And then we can use them in different other more complex scenarios into a new feature of the product. So not necessarily income tax calculation, but actually in the situation because she has some incomes and she has a target. We also identify basically with tax calculations what's her shortfall. So again, we used personas to have examples for our system, how it should behave. And then again, you automate them, you publish them into S3, you share them with your business experts, and then they're going to start gaining more confidence. Okay, I understand what the system is doing, and it's doing the right thing based on these personas. And the evidence, I kind of pinpoint, I guess, on it throughout the whole talk. But the whole idea for it is that in need, do you know your way back? And what we've done is, for us, we identify that whenever we wanted to release, if you excuse me just a second, because there's a lot of noise. So we identified that for every release, we needed to have a unique ID. We needed to have a Confluence page explaining it. We needed to have all the links to different tickets, different version push PRs, different to these automated test reports, so that we can go back, find the breadcrumbs, and identify what happened at one point in time to gain the confidence that we released what we wanted to see. We were confident, we had the evidence to make that release. Again, this is an example of one of our release notes. As you can see, it's a Confluence page. It has a bit of information, links to tickets, links to automated test reports, but it can be a manual process. So then we use even more automation that would help us basically do this. Because if you want to release multiple times a day, you don't want to do this manually. So then we created some Slack bots to trigger tests based on the change to create the release notes automatically. So all we need to do now is only go there and review the evidence to make sure we're safe, and review the test evidence, and maybe do some exploratory to gain that confidence that we are comfortable to release. Cool. So with that in mind, doing that, basically bringing the business closer to the team, you would have one team, one dream, and trying to deliver safely at speed. Basically, we will need to look at the SAFE model. So trying to create a shared understanding, using automation as an enabler, focusing on outcomes, and leaving that evidence trail behind to gain the confidence and the trust to understand the impact of our changes, and to gain the trust that we definitely can release. We're fine to release. It's safe. It's fine. We have the evidence in place that everything is working. I could speak about this for days, but time is not our friend. So I know we delayed a bit. So I want you to have a think about yourself. I want you to think what makes you not sleep at night from a delivery perspective. What doesn't make you comfortable releasing faster? Start from that, discuss with the team, and try to identify, take a step at a time, and see what can make you basically get there. Thank you very much. Let's see if we have time for a couple of questions. Regarding what type of dashboard do I use for test results? As you've, I don't know if you identified, but so we use Jenkins for running tests, scheduling tests, and we use Jenkins as well for our services. So that's what we use as a dashboard. We created loads of dashboards based on, because we have so many test jobs. We started breaking them into areas of the systems for each team, basically, so they can have their own dashboard, so they can see the test results. We also used, as I mentioned, Kibana for analyzing test results. So we can actually have a look basically on the trends, how long the test runs. So we started logging a lot more information, so we can identify we can analyze more the stability of our tests. And then we also have some dashboards there about time to run, how many tests we run, where we made changes, for example, and we created some visualizations on Kibana as well. Hopefully it answered the question. Cool. With that in mind, I also invite everyone to join Ask Me Anything Corner to continue discussion on this topic if you want to. I also know it's lunch break, so hopefully you enjoy your break as well. Thank you very much. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the day.